I'm in Oregon. I know it's morning. My co-judges it's already afternoon. We're very happy to be with you this morning. My name is Sue Leeson. I'm a senior justice on the Oregon Supreme Court. John?
Well, good morning. I'm John Deloach. I am the senior staff attorney for the South Carolina Association of Counties.
Good morning. My name is Beth Ratway. I'm a senior technical assistance coordinator for the American Institutes for Research.
And we would like to meet you before we get started.
Of course. Salutations. We're Irvington High School's Unit 2. I'm Orion Fang.
I'm Frederick Xiong.
I'm Geetika Yalagotin. We'd like to thank the judges and facilitator, as well as our coach, Mr. Martinez.
We're very happy to be with you this morning. By process of elimination, you know the question. It's question 2, but I get to read it, and then we look forward to hearing your presentation. One founder claimed that representatives should refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens whose wisdom may best discern the true interest of their country. Do you agree or disagree with this claim? What alternative systems of representation were considered by the founders? What alternative systems of representation, if any, should be considered in the 21st century? You may begin.
It was James Madison's belief that a republic will be more consonant to the public good than if pronounced by the people themselves convened for the purpose. Even though Madison's views may have held validity during the Constitutional Convention, we believe that his views are incorrect today.
Madison's confidence in the Constitution came from the country's size. Though a small republic could be corrupted by self-interested, unworthy candidates, in a large nation like the United States, Madison believed that voters would be more easily able to filter out those people and vote in people of merit.
Madison also believed that representatives protected against the confusion of the multitude and the cabals of the few. By bringing in more parties and interests into government, representatives would be able to expand the public viewpoint and increase diversity, thereby diluting the chances that a majority of the whole will have a common motive to invade the rights of other citizens.
While Madison's claim is theoretically correct, the anti-federalist criticisms are today's reality. Sentinel notes in Sentinel 1 that the Senate will lead to permanency. As there is no exclusion by rotation, representatives may be continued for life. It was Sentinel's belief that such a body could not fulfill the interests of the people, since their virtue could not be guaranteed and the positions lacked accountability. Today, the existence of career politicians stands as proof of Sentinel's claims.
Furthermore, the author of Brutus I correctly points out another weakness of Madison's system, an inefficiency due to its sheer size. Groups would either end up underrepresented or the process would be too chaotic to make any progress. Representatives, Brutus writes, would also be too engaged in conflicts of interest and opinion to promote the common good of the country. Such an example can be found in the Democratic and Republican parties today, as their repeated failures to compromise has demonstrated such an inefficiency.
Though Madison noted that the existence of factions were unavoidable, the founders had considered alternative systems in order to circumvent such problems. Alexander Hamilton was among a select few who espoused virtual representation, the idea that members could speak for the common public interest and not just for the area that they represented. Hamilton also believed that the parliamentary system was ideal for this, since it would deeply weave together the interests of the representatives and the nation. Other founders looked towards systems of direct representation, such as the governments of pre-existing states. Pennsylvania's Provincial Council was one such example. Consisting of 18 to 72 members, it substituted for the governor and the vice governor in their absence, being able to dismiss the General Assembly, create courts, and appoint judges. However, this system was criticized for not adhering to Montesquieu's separation of powers, since it muddled the line between the three branches of government.
Despite the best efforts of the founders and framers, the entrenchment of the two-party system in American politics has made representation a controversial issue. In order to better reflect the interests of the people, alternative forms of representation should be considered. One alternative is multi-member districting, which can be implemented by amending the Reapportionment Act of 1929. With 435 representatives in the House today, on average, each representative stands for over 750,000 constituents, resulting in minority underrepresentation and partisan gerrymandering. However, by following the example of 10 state legislatures, such as Arizona and South Dakota, minorities and political groups would be more fairly represented in the House, and the House would be more expanded so as to increase representation overall.
In the Senate today, Equal representation has long run its course and should be eliminated, as smaller states are statistically favored over larger ones due to a skewed representative to voter ratio. As a result, voters in larger states have their votes diluted and reduced. However, we acknowledge that while such a change would be in the best interest of democracy, the likelihood is minimal. Thank you for your time, and we're ready to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. John, would you like to start?
Sure. Let's talk about reapportionment, the two-party system. In changing the system of apportionment of representatives, right now that's a state issue. It's the state draws those lines, and there are a number of ways that that's done, either through the legislature or through commissions. How do you propose to change those in the future, going to a multi-member district rather than at-large or single-member districts?
One of the foremost suggestions that has come up, of course, is the idea of an independent redistricting commission that attempts to be as impartial or as evenly bipartisan as possible. And in doing so, they would be able to draw larger districts in the states but have more representatives within them.
Furthermore, I think with multi-member districts, Professor Amy Douglas from Mount Holyoke College suggests that having 5 members for each district would actually make districts immune to the effects of partisan gerrymandering.
Beth?
So you got me at the end. Talk to me about, if we don't have equal representation in the Senate, what are you going to do? What are the options?
So our proposal for changing equal representation in the Senate is making it so that it's equivalent to state populations by percentage. So basically, if a state has 10%, if a state's population makes up 10% of the national population, then they will get 10% of senators, 10% of senators. And this will actually result in having 110 senators rather than 100 senators like we have today.
So you're talking from California to 3 people that are in smaller states. Do you think that some smaller states might push back on that a little bit?
That's undoubtedly going to be the case since the Constitution was founded with the intention of the Senate being a compromise between larger states and smaller states. However, Hamilton actually talks about how the apportionment, specifically in Federalist 54, when he talks about the House, and subsequently when he talks about the Senate in when he talks about the Senate as well, he basically discusses it as a representative against the interests of the people. So it's going to be initially resisted, but at the end of the day, the Senate is there to represent states and subsequently people in those states. And so that's why it's necessary to have a proportional system.
You take on Madison pretty hard, and I'm absolutely delighted to hear people have the courage to do that and to take on Federalist 10. To his defense, I'm just curious, if we had adopted the Virginia plan, what would the system have looked like? And would you have agreed with that more than what came out of the Connecticut Compromise, which I might say Madison hated?
I most definitely agree that the Virginia plan would most likely have been a better alternative. For example, one of the greatest changes compared to the Senate we have today is that Madison's Senate would have its members proportionally allocated based on the total number of representatives and senators per House, and they would have the representatives of the House elect those senators.
Yes.
In doing so, that would support the idea of what Anti-Federalist Brutus III talks about, and having instead a more representative bicameral legislature rather than having an equal legislature in which the smaller states would be able to control the entire legislature.
Okay, now take it the next step. If I can have you stay with us for a second, take it the next step. How would Madison have selected the executive or the Virginia plan? Because the same problem you've pointed out with the Senate, infects the Electoral College, and you didn't address that. He basically proposed a parliamentary system where the Congress would select the executive. Do you guys support that idea? Since the Congress would be more representative of the people proportionally, should they then have the hand in selecting the president?
The problem with such the system you mentioned, the parliament, Madison's idea of what's similar to a parliamentary system in which the executive is selected by the legislative, is problematic. The Anti-Federalists specifically talks about this. They believe that, well, they already believe that the legislative would become this masqueraded aristocracy, specifically Sentinel-3. So if that happens, then what happens when this aristocracy further entrenches their position by electing an executive that is in cahoots with them, thereby
Okay, but let me just interrupt to say, you guys did not address the Electoral College. Don't you have to get rid of that too, given your thinking about the Senate?
Yes, I would agree that we should eliminate the Electoral College. Republicus talks in Anti-Federalist 72 that the problem with the Electoral College's existence is that while it did serve as a compromise to the electoral process debate during the convention, it gives the debate, it gives the electoral process over to a group of people rather than the national population, thus taking away their vote. And I personally believe that we should eliminate the Electoral College.
All right, then if you eliminate the Electoral College, how do you propose fixing the electoral system that will guarantee at least that states, voters in states like mine will see a presidential candidate in any other way other than from the bottom, looking up at the bottom of his airplane as he flies over? Doesn't elimination of the Electoral College by itself, with no other fix, eliminate more than half the state's ability to affect the outcome of a presidential election?
I think the main problem with the Electoral College is that the national popular vote doesn't match up with the electoral vote. And we've seen this with 5 elections throughout history. And just in the past 2 decades, we've seen this with 2 elections, the elections of 2000 and 2016. So if we're talking about representation of people, the Electoral College definitely represents people better overall than, defaulting to the national popular vote would represent people overall more than the Electoral College.
Framer James, sorry, would you like to go?
Finish your thought.
Framer James Wilson during the Constitutional Convention noted the possibility that the direct popular vote would indeed invalidate the idea of states, which was why he proposed the Electoral College. However, it is true that like smaller states would tend to have their votes reduced. So a solution to that would be to have proportional allocation of votes, which would still give smaller states some measure of power while compromising by being more representative.
Thank you. We talked back. I'm going to go back to you.
Yeah.
Oh, see, now I got the Sioux cut off. Damn. All right. Thank you
guys. We just want to keep going. Thank you so much.
Do you want me to start?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you for a great conversation. Thank you for walking us through the questions and Sue digging deeper with you on the first kind of component of the questions and the concepts in Federalist 10 and Madison. And you got us through into the 2-party system and Montesquieu, and then really hit that last bullet talking about the multi-member districting. And so I could tell your flow and the evidence that you put in there. I would have asked, when you talk about Hamilton, he talks about, the whole parliamentary piece, weaving the interests. And I would be curious about how we could do that today, because it seems that we are not weaving the interests. And do we need to switch the system in order to better kind of address that, which goes at your minority component. I would like to have heard a little bit more about the multi-member districting, because you bring up that concept of giving more voice to the minorities, but I didn't hear you unpack that about how that would do that and walk us through. And if we would have had more time, obviously we would have done that. You definitely showed a deep understanding of the concepts in a historical unit that are really still relevant to today. So thank you for allowing us to take you there. It's always nice to hear that you can take these really complex ideas and see the relevance today, which is the most important piece. So thank you very much.
John?
All right. Your arguments were good. They were well reasoned. I would be prepared if you are going to, I guess, espouse major changes, is to know what the advantages and disadvantages are. Because, for example, with just the elimination of the electoral college or major changes, you have to understand that each state individually will have to agree to those changes, because the awarding of the votes really come down to decisions of the by the state. I mean, there are some states that do award electors proportionally, although a vast number do not. Also, you have to understand what the result would be. Is, would it really change things that much if you simply went to proportional reward of electors? Because in, say, California, for example, right now, because Biden won, I think, 63.5%, he received all of the electoral votes for California. In the future, if you went to proportional, the Republican would have been at least been awarded 35% of your, I think, 59 electoral votes. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, I agree. That was a really terrific presentation. You took a question that is so huge and you put your arms around it really, really well. And you packaged it, and you took a very distinct approach to it. Interestingly, I think your reliance on the anti-federalists might come back to bite you. The anti-federalists were small state advocates for the most part. They worried about California becoming California, to tell you the truth, a large populous state, urban commercial, that would just swamp the small rural agricultural states. And so it caused me to smile a bit to have you rely on anti-federalist arguments to support a system that would basically eliminate the disputes between urban and rural by letting the urban areas dominate. Just, it would wipe out, as John says, we small states would just watch the planes fly over because we would no longer be in the discussion. And a whole lot of California wouldn't either. You've got your own urban rural problems in California, and maybe the multi-member districting is the way to go there. I like the fact that you see that there are a number of changes that can be made that don't require constitutional amendments, that a lot of the problems we confront are literally political problems, not necessarily constitutional problems. I'll stop because I would just love to spend the rest of the day visiting with you guys about it. You really are thoughtful, well-prepared, intelligent. Thank you so much for a great presentation.
I appreciate our time here today. Thank you very much.